Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the latest edition of Terrace Talk. Of course, we're all, I suppose, reveling in the 2-2 draw last week at Ipswich Town. Of course, keep the unbeaten run going against the Tractor Boys. And it's back down to earth with Carrow Road this Saturday, Huddersfield Town, the visitors. And with that, delighted to be joined by Tom from the He Takes That Chance podcast. Tom, thank you for coming on the show this morning. Lots has changed at Huddersfield since the last time we met back in August. I think we'll start with the managerial change. Of course, it was the legend that was Neil Warnock in the dugout at the John Smiths back in August. 132 games in charge of Town, a bit of a legend. Of course, replaced him with Darren Moore, formerly of Sheffield Wednesday, was at West Brom as well, sort of a relatively respected manager in English football. What was the feeling, I suppose, around that change, and how's that been going for you guys?
I think, first of all, when the news that Warnock was going to leave, I don't think anyone was happy with that. I think when you looked at the market at the time and who could replace him, I don't really think anyone stood out. I don't think any Town fan really thought anyone's going to come in and do a good a job as what Warnock did, because the team didn't change that much from last season, and he took quite a pretty bang average Championship squad. A lot of people saying it was League One levels, and got as most out as he could of it. So I mean, personally, I was gutted. I thought I just wanted a season where we'd finish like 12th, and I think we'd have got that with Warnock. And then Darren Moore, yeah, I mean, it's a funny one. I think when you look at where he's been before, he's been at teams where the squads have been decent, not like brilliant, but like actually Championship competitive or competitive in the league that they're in. And I'd say it's a big ask for him with this team, with this squad. So I think he needs time. He needs this January window to get in a couple of quality players, which apparently will happen.
Yeah, have you seen sort of any changes in terms of, I suppose, the style of play maybe he's brought to Town? I know Warnock, you kind of know what you're going to get with a Neil Warnock Huddersfield side, and you kind of know how to maybe attack that kind of game as an opposition. What maybe has Darren Moore brought in terms of a style of play, and have the performances maybe changed at all in terms of, have you seen a sort of uprise, I suppose, in the way you play?
Statistically, it's got worse, I think. We have something like half the amount of touches in the opposition box than we did under Warnock. I wouldn't say the football is the tactics aren't much different. It's kind of getting people on the break, playing quite direct. When it's been working, he went through that really funny spell where we lost like 3 or 4 games, 4-0, 4-1, including like Leeds, which was I just think the way things were going, he hadn't got off to a good start, and then to go to Leeds and lose 4-1, he lost a lot of fans that day, 4-0 down at half time. I think he's clawed a couple back. We've been a bit more conservative, you'd say now. But the football from Warnock was better. I think Warnock gets a lot of he gets put in that category, doesn't he, of a manager who just plays defensive, boring football, but it's very direct when it's happening. It's very direct. He goes straight to the strikers. It can be exciting. Whereas Darren Moore's stuff is a bit more slower. There's a bit more slow build up. We don't see a lot of the ball in the attacking third, and then you don't really see people taking that many chances. So again, I think it comes back to who you've got in the team as well. We've got quite a few players injured. Really, we've only got Danny Ward as a striker this year, and then you're looking at Cian Harrott, who's now out for the rest of the year, and Kyle Hudlin, who's out maybe till this month. But they're not Championship quality strikers, so you're putting a lot of hope on kind of 1 or 2 players to get us goals this season. And yeah, someone else has stepped up. Berzog, who's probably more of a winger, but he might leave in December because he's only on loan. I think he's only on loan for half a season at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned top of the show, and I think when you had Warnock and we spoke back in August, you sort of said top half would maybe be the aim for the season. Currently, 2 points above the drop zone. What's the expectations now for the rest of the season? Is it just purely survival, or do you feel that Huddersfield, maybe with the January window coming up, that you could, sort of maybe potentially push, I suppose, a little bit higher up the table?
I think the beauty of this league this year, Adam, is how tight that kind of bottom section is. I mean, Leicester and unfortunately for you lot, Ipswich are kind of running away with it. It looks like at the moment, but then it gets really congested. I think the one hope I've got, and there's been a lot of talk about, Darren Moss, as long as he keeps us out of relegation by January and gives a chance. I actually think even if we drop into that bottom three, I'm not that worried, because I just think there's a lot of teams that are underperforming, not doing very well, and are on kind of bad runs. I worry that some of these teams have now sacked their managers, and you might see that bounce, or they might bring someone in who's a bit better and can do more with the squads that they've got. But for me, yeah, it's just staying up again, annoyingly. I do worry that QPR. I mean, QPR shouldn't be down there anyway when you look at the kind of squad that they've got. Wednesday look like to have recruited quite well with this manager, and it doesn't really look like he's just having that kind of new manager bounce. There seems to be actually picking up performance and stuff. So, I mean, well, the good thing with them, we've got quite a bit of a buffer on them. But then I look at like Millwall, Stoke. I don't think Swansea are too great kind of this season. There's teams that I think if Darren Moore can, it's just, you look at results, we're drawing a lot and we're kind of on that knife edge. If he can switch those draws into wins, then I think we might be able to claw ourselves out quite easily, to be fair.
Yeah, you mentioned them draws. That's something I was going to bring up. I think it's 5 in the last 8 games. You've already had 10 so far this season, but just 1 win in the last 10 games. Of course, that was at Sunderland. How big a concern is those sort of drawing games mentality? I mean, it's difficult when you're in kind of the relegation battle. They always say, don't lose the game, but when you're kind of trying to get out of it and push, a little bit of a buffer away, you need to try and get the wins. How big of a concern is that, and how easy do you think it could be to turn that tide?
Yeah, Darren draw is what some people have coined it now, and it's like I get it. I think it comes off the back of those results where it was 4-0, 4-1, and I think he obviously realised he can't play whatever he was trying to play in those games. I still haven't seen a kind of Darren Moore tactic yet. There was, when we played Ipswich, I was like, oh, this is brilliant. He was very direct. He used the wings. He used Sorba and Karoma. We deserved to beat Ipswich. I think it ended 2-2. It was just they got going like the last 10 minutes. And then I thought, right, if he kicks on from this and I see more of that, I'll be happy. And then we haven't seen that since then. And yeah, I think again, it's broken record on our podcast. It's like these draws could become wins. I think we need 3 kind of, not even like, brilliant first team quality signings. We just need 3 kind of competent championship players to come into the team. And I think those kind of results become wins, because we're getting tired in games and you can see that. And then when you look at the bench, it's a bunch of kids, and it's like, then they're not really coming on and changing the game. They're coming on and he's like bringing on people like Romani Edmonds-Green, who's been playing CDM, and he's on there with the likes of Hogg and Wiles, and it almost goes to like a back 6. I think it gets to a point where Moore must realise like, we're not gonna win this game with what we've got on the bench, so let's just take the point and hope for the best kind of thing. So like I said, it all comes down to signings of changing those draws into wins for me.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few players already. Who's maybe been the star man so far this season for Tanner? You sort of mentioned Bergzorg, who you're sort of worried might leave it in January. Already got 5 goals. Sort of seems like maybe this sort of second half of the first half of the season, almost he's kind of picked up his form a little bit. Michael Hellick at the back, a well-known player in the Championship. Seems like he's a pretty good performer for Tan. But who's maybe the one to look out for the most, I suppose, on Saturday at Gower Road?
Yeah, I mean, those two have been brilliant. I mean, Hellick is such a good defender. I mean, I look at our defence, and when it's on paper, it's a very good defense for the Championship, but when you're defending for probably 70% of the game, it gets quite hard, doesn't it? So, and they're probably not enjoying that at the moment. Then Herzog's been great. He's kind of one of those players. We used to have a player called Van La Parra who just was skillful, tricky, could frustrate you quite a bit, but he reminds me of that. He's very direct. He'll try tricks and take chances, have a lot of shots. And you need that in a team now and again. I wouldn't say he's kind of a player that I put all my hope on kind of thing. I think Sorba Thomas has stepped up brilliantly. The one thing I give Darren Moore, and I think quite a few Town fans have noticed, is he's got more out of Sorba Thomas than anyone else has. Carlos Corberán realised how good his delivery was, and he put him on corners, do you know what I mean? And he got loads of assists from that kind of thing. But I think Darren Moore's really got a leader out of him now. He's got someone who I think looks a lot more mature than under Carlos and before, and when he fell out with people, whatever, last year he went to Blackburn. You don't see any of that anymore in him. I think he's got a bit out of Karoma as well, but Karoma's the one thing. I mean, you look at players, you say, why are they at this level? Why can't they push on? And I think Josh Kromer's a perfect example of that. It's just peaks and troughs with him. There's never really any consistency. So hopefully he'll come into a bit of consistency again and stuff. But Jack Rudoni's back from injury as well, who we've been missing massively. So I'd say look out for him on Saturday. I would be very surprised if Town did go down, or even if Town, just stayed up. If he keeps playing now, if he has a good run for the rest of the season, I'd be surprised if he's still at Huddersfield next year, to be honest.
Yeah, before we talk about the game on Saturday, interested to get your thoughts on a man in the Norwich City dugout, of course, a well-known character around the town of Huddersfield, David Wagner, been under a lot of pressure at different points this season due to kind of the run of form that Norwich have been on. He's picked up a little bit of late, just one defeat in the last 7. Of course, got the draw last week at Ipswich, which is sort of going to keep him in the job, I suppose, for a little bit more time now. Sort of earn him a little bit of credit almost in the bank. But are you a little bit surprised maybe at the way it's turned out? Of course, such a successful manager at Huddersfield, a lot of resource at Norwich as well in terms of players. We've had mitigating factors in terms of injuries and stuff, but of course, currently mid-table, you may be a little bit surprised Norwich aren't more in that top 6 bracket, maybe.
It's a tough one with David, isn't it? Like, I think everything fell into place perfectly when he was at Town. I think because he was at Dortmund seconds, wasn't he? And you saw the type of players he brought in at Town. I think they were almost hidden gems within the German tiers. We brought in all those German players who probably were better than where they were playing at that time. And I just think you look at everywhere else he's been, he's kind of normally gets off to a very good start, and then it I don't know if people figure him out. I think we kind of saw it at Town where in that second season, I think he realised he had to go very defensive, and we started seeing not the football that we kind of was winning us games, and that was his downfall at Town. I don't know if that's kind of how things have worked out at Norwich. It's gone more defensive than what it was when he first got there, and I don't know if it's a mentality thing for him now because it's happened at 3 or 4 clubs. He's such a good short fix manager. I think if you need a boost, and then it kind of, I think it's almost like he's got a shelf life, unfortunately. But results seem to have picked up again a little bit for you, and I really hope it works out for him and he can push on, because one thing is he's such a nice bloke, and then you've also got Bueller, haven't you, and Clem as well. Clem is probably. He's so highly regarded in the goalkeeping community, but he's also such a top bloke, and just having him in your club, I think, is great because his fan engagement when he was at Town was brilliant, and I'm sure it'll be the same at Norwich. So, I only hope that it works for him. But it's still really, every time I see him at another club, I get get upset about it because it's David, isn't it? It's our David Wagner. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, I think, with Norwich and Daniel Farker. A few fans still kind of yearning, I suppose, for him, even now he's at Leeds, such a well-loved man. And yeah, very similar to David at Huddersfield. Just before we talk about Saturday's game, it was 4-0 in the reverse fixture back in August. Probably not something you're going to want to talk about too much, and something that we sort of almost forgotten happened because of the way it's been ever since. But what sort of, I suppose, do you have, or memory-wise, from that game? And are you expecting, I suppose, a little bit more of a different test on Saturday?
I remember watching that and thinking we didn't actually play that bad. It felt like one of those where you took your chances really well and at really key times. Was you? I think were you 1-0 up at halftime or something? I remember you scoring like just after halftime and us coming out and thinking, right, as long as we weather it for about 20 minutes, keep tight, we'll be fine. And then I think Rowe popped up and slotted one in from about 5 yards out or something. Brilliant ball across the box. But it was I didn't come away thinking, we got battered there and I'm worried about anything, because I remember we did create quite a few chances. It was just not putting it away. So I don't think it's going to be similar to that. I think the way Darren Moore will set up, I think if things go right, it should frustrate Norwich quite a lot. It's possibly going to be a very boring game, I think. With how things are going. So yeah, I don't think it'll be anything like the last time we met Adam.
No, with that, I'm going to sort of push you for a score prediction and how you see this game going there on Saturday afternoon.
We were reasonably confident on our podcast just because I don't know, we were thinking maybe after the derby and everything. I mean, you might have had a bit of a pickup from that, but also it'll have taken quite a bit about it. It's quite a down-to-earth thing, isn't it? When you play a big derby like that. I mean, it looked like the atmosphere was mad. Obviously, Ipswich were dying for that first win in God knows how long, so it looked crazy kind of thing, all the build-up and everything. And then you play Huddersfield at home, and we'll probably bring maybe 500, I think, on just before Christmas to Norwich kind of thing. It's not going to be a big away following. And I think we all pretty much said a draw. I think 1-1 probably, because you score goals. It's just whether we defend really well, I think, and keep certain players quiet.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key. A few of our wingers have maybe stepped up in recent games. Borja Sainz has kind of come onto the scene. He's been injured for most of the season, so intrigued to see what we get. I think Norwich are unbeaten in the last 5 meetings between the two sides. A pretty good record sort of over the last 20 years. So maybe that's something for us Norwich fans to cling on to heading into Saturday. And just finally, Tom, do you want to plug your podcast and where any Norwich Huddersfield fans can find the content?
We're the Andy Takes That Chance podcast. We're on everything, YouTube, Spotify and all that. And I'd just like to apologise if anyone heard it. It sounded like my dog might have like ripped something apart halfway through that recording if there was some shouting in the background.
There we go. Really do appreciate it anyway, Tom, your time this morning. And that will round off the show. Of course, a really busy period of Christmas games coming up for the Canaries, and maybe that will dictate where they finish this season. It does feel like a really crucial kind of 5 or 6 games now coming up. Lots of teams around the playoff picture, and Huddersfield, of course, the other end of the spectrum, a big opportunity to try and mount that charge and 3 points hopefully on Saturday. Lots of great content across our channels at the moment as well. We'll be speaking to David Wagner this afternoon at Colney, so all the latest team news and everything around this game we'll get updates on. Whether Josh Sargent might potentially be back as well. Of course, got injured against Huddersfield in the reverse fixture.
I hope not.
Yeah, it's one of them. I think no Norwich fans hoping he might be available. I think it might be a week too soon, but we'll see what we get. Lots of other great content as well coming your way. Tactics board with Sam and all the sort of starting 11 he's predicting is going to be there, and other stuff across the Pink and channel. So keep it locked to us and we'll have you covered heading down to Carrow Road on Saturday. Hopefully we'll get a good game and not a boring game as maybe Tom and I expect. So we'll see what we get, and hopefully it'll be 3 points for the Canaries.